My name is Desmond Lazaro, and this is the Cosmos exhibition, the Chemould Gallery, Mumbai, India. My mother passed away in 2018, and she was a cancer patient. And I asked her, what's going to happen afterwards? She just looked at me very blankly and said, "No, I'm going up there, and that's it." And I thought, well, I need to look what is up there, what actually is the stars, because we live with them all our lives and we know very little about them. And once you begin to understand, well, where they are, what does it mean to you down here? In other words, what is our relationship to the cosmos, to the heavens? And this is where this investigation really began. So when you're trying to make an image of the cosmos, it's slightly ridiculous because you can't. It's the universe. You can't do this. The indigenous Aboriginal people have a really interesting way of looking at it. When they look at the Milky Way, they don't look at the actual stars, but they look at the distance and the spaces between stars, which implies there's something within the darkness. There's something within that relationship between things. So the journey of the cosmos in terms of imagery began with the Chartres Cathedral in Paris. So this is the first analytical drawing of the labyrinth on a larger scale, because it's easier to work out that way. And you end up with the 6 petals, which are the center of the actual maze itself, and then this pathway. So if we were to look at the first drawings, this is an analysis of how you arrive at that, and these actual pathways here. And interestingly enough, they have these cusps on the edge of the actual labyrinth, which they're called lunations, which are phases of the moon. So there's 28, 28, 28, and 28. And within the labyrinth here, within Chartres, it's described as the 6 full petals at the center. And then there's the 11 concentric bands, which are the planetary movement. I learned how to make color as an apprentice and learning miniature and pitch white painting. So in trying to fashion an image of the cosmos, I sort of returned to color. And I was always interested in what would happen if you reintroduced that alchemy of color back into making images. And if you look at the way the maps are laid out, you have the Earth at the center, and then you have these concentric bands of color. Each one is based on a planetary orbit. So within the Ptolemaic system, you basically had the 7 visible planets, and each planet has a metal association, a metal color. So for instance, Venus is basically copper carbonates, Mars is the iron oxides, Jupiter is lead, and Saturn is lead, tin, white, massicoat. And in this particular one, the bands here is the first ever image of a star's light spectrum. And these bands are actually chemical signatures, and that's basically how you figure out what is a star made of. And then in the final work, sort of bring these different elements together. With in this size, in the 6-pointed star at the center, we focus on the earth, air, fire, and water. So taking the concentric forms a bit further, in this one I sort of removed the cusps and just replaced them with the actual phases of the moon itself, the 28 of the normal moon cycle. And then in the center, decided that I wanted to work with the Christian icon tradition of water gilding, and again, reintroduce a 13-pointed star at the center of the work. In this one, I wanted to just describe also the orbits of each planet as it moves around the actual sun itself, which is what's kind of represented here. So for instance, you have 3 bands of Saturn, but then I wanted to actually illustrate the orbit of Saturn itself as it moves around the heavens. So according to the Vedic tradition, there are 7 inner planets which are invisible, which is represented in the work, followed by the concentric bands of the planets, as we've described them before. And in this one, I wanted to introduce the idea of the Milky Way as a river. And within the Milky Way are the 12 houses of the zodiac, followed by the 27 nakshatras. So when you take the basic ground plan of the temple and you analyze it using a thing called a star cut diagram, which is basically a circle and a square, this being the marriage of heaven and earth, interestingly enough, I found a five-pointed pentagram at the centre of the actual image itself. And of course, the square and the circle is the marriage of heaven and earth, and you can see Brahma's at the centre, and you have the traces of what would be the cosmic person on the edge of it. So these works are basically based on the transit of Venus, and the transit happens when the Earth, the Sun, and the Venus sort of conjunct. They line up, and they line up every 122 years. So basically, this is Venus, this is the Sun, and you've shot the image from the Earth. And over the last 400 years, we've had 6 transits. My great-great-grandfather was a watchmaker in Bangalore, and as a homage to him, we decided to make a Venus pentagram pocket watch. This kind of image of the Venus pentagram, so you see the Sun, the Earth at the centre, and this is the actual pentagram that it inscribes across the heavens. This is a geometry of how you arrive at that in terms of an image. And then later on we turned it into basically what became the pocket watch. And these are the first renditions of that. And because Barry Lee is a watchmaker, we actually designed it so that you would have, the normal hands of a pocket watch and one extra one which would mark the 5 points of the Venus pentagram itself. And these are just studies for the eventual watch itself. This installation is a homage to William and Carol Herschel, who were the 18th century telescope makers. And what they did is that they basically took a section of the heavens, and William every night would basically write down with a simple cross in his notebook an actual star. And he was trying to really map the heavens and create the first image, which is kind of an insane thing to do. But what he ended up making was the first images where this is the ecliptic, and if you imagine the sun at the centre, and what he's kind of saying is that if you look in that direction, there are more stars than if you look in that direction. And it suggests that our Milky Way and our galaxy is actually quite stretched, which, considering its time, was quite remarkable. So he later revised his first drawing, and he produced this image, which is the first kind of elongated, stretched, amoebic form of the galaxy. And considering it was done in the sort of 18th century, it remained the standard model well into the 21st. Curiously enough, when Herschel published his image of the galaxy, the Milky Way, on the left-hand side were these 2 strange drawings, which is basically kind of reproduced here. So imagine a telescope as it's been squashed, so you end up with these concentric bands anyway. But the interesting thing is that he then does it as a 6-pointed star, which is kind of reproduced within the image. Of course, the 6 days of creation, the 7th is the day of rest. And you find that in many traditions throughout the world. I wanted to, as a homage to Herschel, to create an environment of stars. And I'm smitten by the poem, Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. And I just wanted to reproduce the stars. Eventually this will be a maquette for a museum piece, which will be on a vast scale of stars. So the word cosmos actually comes from the Greek word spelled with a K, and it implies adornment, which then begs the question of what exactly is being adorned, and therefore what is actually being hidden. And when you enter the idea of looking at the universe, we can build, and we are building bigger and better telescopes that are seeing further and further. But surely the question is, who's doing the looking? And what's on the other end of the telescope, because surely that dictates what's out there, because it's our relationship to it. So what's in the relationship between us and the heavens? And this exhibition is a personal journey of that.